Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Scare Your Friends podcast. My name is John, a.k.a. Flea, and this is just a little preamble before the episode really begins. Unfortunately, I tried recording this with a new laptop, and unfortunately, the audio just isn't as good as some of my previous episodes, especially some of my newer episodes. So, with that in mind, I just want to thank Urkelbot666 for his help with editing this thing. I swear to God, the raw audio of this sounded like static with our voices kind of trailing off in the background. I don't know if this is because of the new computer I tried to record this on, or what the hell happened, but I'm going to try and get to the bottom of it, and hopefully future episodes of Scare Your Friends do not suffer as much as this one did. Now, in terms of the actual story, it's a great story. Bedtime is an awesome story, and we have a lot of really good dialogue between the four of us. This episode was myself, William, Dan, and Dylan. We had a lot of good back and forth on this one, and I wanted to keep that. Even though the audio may not be as good, I still think the episode is still worth listening to, because the story is good, and I think people should listen to it. So I want you to sit back, relax, and try to enjoy this episode. This is me and my friends tackling Michael Whitehouse's Bedtime.
William's very traditional when it comes to these kinds of things.
Eyes closed, top bunk, through the sheet, and you pray the whole time. Because that's what's really important. That's what's really happening, Dylan. That's what it's all about.
Really?
Praise Jesus.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scare Your Friends. My name is John, a.k.a. Skillfully, and I am joined in a room filled with friends. Tonight, we have Dan, Dylan, and William. What's up, everybody?
Nothing much, John. Just hanging out, sitting in Dan's room, the Dan hole.
As Dan cheers us with a can, and Dylan holds up the
rock on.
Okay,
it's rock on.
I don't know if you noticed, but it says Dan's domain. There's a sign on the other side of the door. They say as they look at the fucking blank door.
I mean,
when you walk in, it says Dan's domain on the side.
I prefer the Dan hole, personally.
So do I, honestly.
It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm in your hole rather than your domain right now.
I'm really uncomfortable right now. Like, more so than usual.
What do you think, John? Does this feel more like a domain or a hole?
Missing cake.
It's missing the bed cake. That's true.
Oh, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Oh, the low point.
I've never forgotten
It
that.
wasn't cake. Well, it was cheesecake and apple pie.
One of my first times ever meeting Dan. Coming
That's
to his
not
room.
true.
It was. They
Was
fell
it
down.
really?
It was very early on, and I think, were you asleep? You were asleep at the time because we came over to wake you up and your door was open.
Okay, Jesus Christ.
And
for those of you at home,
He fell down.
a couple of years ago, I was at a low point. It was right after Thanksgiving. Okay, I went into my room, and I have a memory foam mattress, so you can put shit on there and nothing gets disturbed. I went into my room. I fell asleep with a fucking plate of pie and cheesecake on my bed next to me, and these chuckle fucks rolled up at my house because I wasn't responding to text messages, opened my door, and there was me in my underwear with a fucking cheesecake, a piece of cheesecake and pie.
I've never forgotten it.
No, you shouldn't. It's a horrific sight, and I apologize. You know what? Sometimes I'm happy we've never done a face cam because nobody can imagine that image in their head then, and that's fine. I'm doing everybody a favor.
Oh, they can imagine.
Yeah, they can imagine. They can imagine.
How are you doing otherwise, Dan?
I'm great considering that's out in the fucking ether now. Holy shit.
How about you, Dylan?
Oh, I'm good. Just school's killing me at this point. I just want to be done with it.
How far along are we with school?
Well, Dad, let me tell you.
Jesus. All right,
Junior
conversations.
Technically, I'm in my junior year, but I still got another 3 years to go because I had to.
So you're freshman year?
No.
So you have 3
Don't
more
question
years.
it. Let him.
Okay.
No, sorry. No.
You're super senior, Dill? This is a riveting conversation.
Exactly. How about you, William? What's going on with you?
He also told
I work a 9 to 5. I have nothing. That's it.
I have nothing. I work 9 to 5. I have nothing. That's what he says.
That's it.
Yeah, you play any good video games lately,
Jack,
John?
this
Or
isn't-
William
this isn't
seen any
a bit-
movies?
They don't want to know.
What about your new brand new Xbox?
I won.
Please.
Oh yeah, well,
Please.
I won.
Please tell that story.
I won the Taco Bell Xbox. That's all. And everybody really enjoys that because I eat almost exclusively at Taco Bell. So I feel like I earned it. That's all. I've dumped a lot of money into that corporation. I enjoy their food. I unironically shill for them. And they gave me
the least they can do is give you a fucking
So they
Xbox.
gave me an Xbox. It makes a little dong when I turn it on. That's it. This is my Taco Bell pitch. They're not paying me. I wish they were.
They gave you a free Xbox.
They did. Yeah, so they're paying me.
They didn't give him the free. He won a contest.
I won a contest.
And so they're like, oh, this motherfucker spends all of his time here. We should give him something.
But it felt that way to me.
It was a gift.
It felt like a reward.
A gift from the Taco Bell people.
It felt like I earned it, most importantly.
I don't think I earned it, especially since my arteries are about 80% clogged at this point.
I've eaten about a couple years off my life at this stage, so, I'll take the Xbox.
Wow.
Thanks, Yum Foods.
All right. So let's just get right to it. Tonight we're going to be reading a...
You okay?
Jesus.
Are you okay?
What a way to start.
Just our eating habits
Taco
in
Bell
general.
and cake.
Yeah, Dylan, what are you eating currently? What have you been eating lately? Can we do that?
Nothing much, really, compared to what you guys have been eating.
Yeah, I guess. All right, sorry, John.
I did go to a shitty restaurant on Thanksgiving. So.
All right.
Okay, so what are we reading, John?
We are reading a story called Bedtime. It was written in October of 2012 by Michael Whitehouse, who is a pretty well-known author. I'm not 100% familiar with his work. I know his name is out there, though, in the ether in terms of creepypastas.
He's well known, but not by you.
Not by me. At least not yet.
Oh, I like that. All right.
So what we'll do is we're going to read the first part of Bedtime, and if we like it, we're going to read the second part and the third part.
All right, well, don't.
But we're not going to do it. We're not going to do what we did with the showers, where we read them back to back to back. I promise you that. So, all right. So.
As Dylan shudders in the corner. Oh, fuck, no.
A chill falls over.
Well, that's all right. Dylan and I remember. William doesn't even remember being in my house that day.
It's honestly amazing, and I gotta say this for the audience at home. It's amazing how William forgets the podcast.
I mean, we've talked about it before, but Jesus Christ, we honestly, for a good 10 minutes before we hit record, we're talking to him about it, and he thought he was fucking with us. He genuinely doesn't remember recording anything, and I put it on for him, and he fucking freaked out because it was this surreal experience because he doesn't remember saying any of those
Hearing
words.
yourself speak and not remembering when you said it is kind of terrifying.
It is a little terrifying.
Were you possessed?
I don't know. I guess
No.
I was there. You proved it.
No, John
That's
fucking,
a creepypasta.
John fucking took the previous recordings and just spliced in. He did a fucking soundboard
Yeah,
of all of the other shit.
it's probably doable.
Probably.
Okay, so let's just not dilly-dally anymore. We've done a lot of that today. And we're going to read the story called Bedtime. Bedtime is supposed to be a happy event for a tired child. For me, it was terrifying. While some children might complain about being put to bed before they have finished watching a film or playing their favorite video game, when I was a child, the nighttime was something to truly fear. Somewhere in the back of my mind, it still is. As someone who is trained in the sciences, I cannot prove that what happened to me was objectively real, but I can swear that I experienced a genuine horror, a fear which, in my life, I'm glad to say, has never been equaled. I will relate it to you all now as best I can. Make of it what you will, but I'm glad that I'm just going to get it off my chest.
I can't remember exactly when it started, but my apprehension towards falling asleep seemed to correspond with my being moved into a room of my own. I was 8 years old at the time, and until then I had shared a room, quite happily, with my older brother. As is perfectly understandable for a boy 5 years my senior, my brother eventually wished for a room of his own, and as a result, I was given the room at the back of the house. It was a small, narrow, yet oddly elongated room, large enough for a bed and a couple of chests of drawers, but not much else. I couldn't really complain because, even at that age, I understood that we did not have a large house, and I had no real cause to be disappointed, as my family was both loving and caring. It was a happy childhood during the day.
Dun, dun, dun!
The solitary window looked out onto our back garden. Nothing out of the ordinary, but even during the day, the light which crept into that room seemed almost hesitant. As my brother was given a new bed, I was given the bunk beds which we used to share. While I was upset about sleeping on my own, I was excited at the thought of being able to sleep in the top bunk, which seemed far more adventurous to me. From the very first night, I remember a strange feeling of unease creeping slowly from the back of my mind.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Dale, but this is like the second or third story we've read where a character has had a bunk bed, but nobody on the fucking bottom bunk. What is with that? Penfield did that
little
too.
kids get mad wet for the top bunk, dude.
I know, but like it's so weird that we've read two stories.
Jesus Christ! Hold the fuck on.
I was just trying to power through.
Jesus!
Just trying to power through.
It's true.
Oh.
I know. Listen, I was in the top bunk. I'm just saying, I was in the top bunk when I was a kid and I shared a room with my brother. But it's just weird that we've read two stories now where that's like a thing, where the character gets bunk beds even though they're not sharing
That's
a room.
weird for me. I had bunk beds too, and I always chose the bottom bunk.
It's because you were bottom. The top bunk is a power move.
Yeah, but Sean, you slept in the same room with your brother, right?
No, I didn't.
Okay, then that's fucking weird.
Thank you.
That's weird. Is that why we do these stories? Because it reminds you of your childhood?
The truth comes out.
No.
That was the most uncertain I've ever heard you be.
No.
Holy shit. Wow.
No.
Try a little bit harder next time. God damn.
When a little kid sees a bunk bed, he can be on the ground like a fucking loser.
Like a peasant.
Or he can sleep in the fucking sky. That little kid's going up. He's going to the top.
To defend, my top bunk was really high up there. And
Yeah,
your
the
head
higher
hit,
the better. You're
right,
in the
they hit,
castle.
but your head hit the ceiling whenever you would sit up. Because William used to sleep on the top bunk here.
When I would go over, I would sleep in the top bunk. That's where I fucking went.
That's where I belonged.
What the fuck's going on?
I don't know, Dylan, keep reading. I apologize. I just thought it was
That's not
funny.
fault. No, it's not your fault. It's Sir William here talking about being on top.
I know.
As a child.
On the top bunk.
William's very traditional when it comes to these kinds of things.
Eyes closed, top bunk. Through the sheet. And you pray the whole time. Because that's what's really important. That's what's really happening, Dylan. That's what it's all about.
Really?
Praise Jesus.
Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
From the very first night, I remember a strange feeling of unease creeping slowly from the back of my mind. I lay on the top bunk staring down at my action figures and cars strewn up across the green-blue carpet. As imaginary battles and adventures took place between the toys on the floor, I couldn't help but feel that my eyes were slowly drawn towards the bottom bunk, as if something was moving in the corner of my eye, something which did not wish to be seen. The bunk was empty, impeccably made with a dark blue blanket tucked in neatly, partially covering two rather bland white pillows. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was a child, and the noise slipping under my door from my parents' television bathed me in a warm sense of safety and well-being. I fell asleep.
When you awaken from a deep sleep to something moving or stirring, it can take a few moments for you to truly understand what is happening. The fog of sleep hangs over your eyes and ears even when lucid. Something was moving. There's no doubt about that. At first I wasn't sure what it was. Everything was dark, almost pitch black, but there was enough light creeping in from outside to outline that narrowly suffocating room. Two thoughts appeared in my mind almost simultaneously. The first was that my parents were in bed because the rest of the house lay both in darkness and silence. The second thought turned to the noise, a noise which had obviously woken me. As the last cobwebs of sleep withered from my mind, the noise took on a more familiar form. Sometimes the simplest of sounds can be the most unnerving. A cold wind whistling through the tree outside, a neighbor's footsteps uncomfortably close, or in this case, the simple sound of bed sheets rustling in the dark.
Somebody's jerking off.
It's Sean in the bottom bunk.
Literally every college experience when you're rooming with another guy.
Let me tell you something, because not me, but a friend of mine when I was going to school, he straight up had a roommate. Guy didn't even wait till my buddy left.
Yeah.
He would lay in bed and the guy would like say his name to see if he was asleep, and then just start beating.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you jerk off with somebody else in the room? A complete stranger, by the way, really,
Dude,
when you think about it.
It's an
That's
epidemic.
crazy.
I think everyone has that story.
That's crazy.
It's wild. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Anyway.
Yeah, that's it. I have no greater insight.
That was it. Bed sheets rustling in the dark as if some disturbed sleeper or jerker was attempting to get all too comfortable.
Too comfortable, indeed.
I lay there in disbelief, thinking that the noise was either my imagination or perhaps just my pet cat finding somewhere comfortable to spend the night. It was then that I noticed my door, shut as it had been as I had fallen asleep. Perhaps my mom had checked in on me and the cat had sneaked in the room then.
Yes, that must have been it. I turned to face the wall, closing my eyes in vain, hope that I would fall back to sleep. As I moved, the rustling noise from underneath me ceased. I thought that I must have disturbed my cat, but I quickly realized that the visitor in the bottom bunk was much less mundane than my pet trying to sleep, and much, much more sinister. As if alerted to, and disgruntled by, my presence, the disturbed sleeper began to toss and turn violently, like a child having a temper tantrum in their bed. I could hear the sheets twist and turn with increased ferocity. Fear then gripped me, not in a subtle way, not like the false sense of unease that I had experienced earlier, but now potent and terrifying. My heart raced as my eyes panicked, scanning the almost impeccable darkness. Impenetrable darkness. I let out a cry.
So, like, this, to me, and we've talked about this before, but I fucking hate being alone in the dark.
Really?
So, yeah, that's my biggest fear. I just, the sense of unease, that sense of eyes watching, the sense of not being able to see anything or get a sense of where anything is or anything else. Now, this is, like, up there for me. There's nothing worse than being alone in the dark and then hearing something else. That's fucking terrifying to me. So this is hitting home real hard right now. Right. And again, we have this like really simple premise that so far is set up really well, where the kid, he's small, he's like 8 or 9, he's on the top bunk, there's something underneath him. And it's like, well, how the fuck do you get out of that situation?
Yeah, who says you can't have a child narrator? Because so far, almost every story we've read that has had a child narrator has been good. I can't think of any, aside from Strangled Red.
Well, you have...
Other than that.
You get more creativity from the child, because the child's imagination can go from, like...
Well, I mean, the child's imagination is almost... it's only as limited or expansive as the author allows it to be. You know,
I'm talking in general, like when you see a kid, like, you know, they can go from something very serious to something very
right. But in the context of a story that we're reading, it's the author's decision, right? But for me, it's because these aren't like children experiencing this. This is people recalling it, right? It's not really children as unreliable narrators. I think the closest we ever got to that is Whimsy Wood, or even Wide Mouths, technically, if you want to get technical.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so far so good. I like it's very simple, and I like the setup.
As most young boys do, I instinctively shouted on my mother. On my mother? Shouted on my mother?
Shouted on my mother. You read that right.
Yep, I could hear something stir on the other side of the house. But as I began to breathe a sigh of relief that my parents were coming to save me, the bunk bed suddenly started to shake violently, as if gripped by an earthquake, scraping against the wall. I could hear the sheets below me thrashing around as if tormented by malice. I did not want to jump down to safety, as I feared the thing on the bottom bunk would reach out and grab me, pulling me into the darkness, so I stayed there, white knuckles clenched on my blanket like a shroud of protection. The wait seemed like an eternity. The door finally and thankfully burst open, and I lay bathed in light while the bottom bunk, the resting place of my unwanted visitor, lay empty and peaceful.
I cried, and my mother consoled me. Tears of fear, followed by relief, streamed down my face. Yet through all the horror and relief, I did not tell her why I was so upset. I cannot explain it, but it was as though whatever had been in that bunk would return if I even so much as spoke of it or uttered a single syllable of its existence. Whether that was the truth, I do not know, but as a child, I felt as if that unseen menace remained close by listening. My mother lay in the empty bunk, promising to stay there until morning. Eventually, my anxiety diminished. Tiredness pushed me back towards sleep, but I remained restless, waking several times momentarily to the sound of rustling bedsheets. I remember the next day wanting to go anywhere, be anywhere, but in that narrow, suffocating room. It was a Saturday, and I played outside, quite happily with my friends. Although our house was not large, we were lucky to have a long, sloping garden in the back. We played there often, as much of it was overgrown, and we could hide in the bushes, climb in the huge sycamore tree which towered above all else, and easily imagine ourselves in the throes of a grand adventure in some untamed exotic land.
As fun as it all was, occasionally my eye would turn to the small window, ordinary, slight, and innocuous.
Yeah.
But for me, that thin boundary was a looking glass into a strange, cold pocket of dread. Outside the lush green surroundings of our garden, filled with the smiling faces of my friends, could not extinguish the creeping feeling clawing its way up my spine, each hair standing on end. The feeling of something in that room watching me play, waiting for the night when I would be alone, eagerly filled with hate. It may sound strange to you, but by the time my parents ushered me back into that room for the night, I said nothing. I didn't protest. I didn't even make an excuse as to why I couldn't sleep there. I simply and sullenly walked into that room, climbed a few steps into the top bunk, and then waited. As an adult, I would be telling everyone about my experience, but even at that age, I felt almost silly to be talking about something which I really had no evidence for. I would be lying, however, if I said that this was my primary reason. I still felt that this thing would be enraged if I so much as speak of it. It's funny how certain words can remain hidden from your mind, no matter how blatant and obvious they are. One word came to me that second night, lying there in the darkness alone. Frightened, aware of a rotten change in the atmosphere, a thickening of the air as if something had displaced it, as I heard the first casual twists of the bed sheets below, the first anxious increase in my heartbeat as at the realization that something was once again in the bottom bunk. That word, a word which had been sent into exile, filtered up through my consciousness, breaking free of all repression, gasping for air, screaming, etching and carving itself into my mind. Ghost.
I feel like that paragraph was a little pretentious.
Yeah, the ending was
That was a lot.
Yeah.
I might be just nitpicking here.
Front load a little bit. Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that was a lot.
I mean, it's no Showers Part 3, but, you know.
Well, I can't.
You don't remember, right? I'm sorry, I apologize. I keep forgetting that you don't remember. As this thought came to me, I noticed that my unwelcome visitor had ceased moving. The bedsheets lay calm and dormant, but they had been replaced by something far more hideous. A slow, rhythmic, rasping breath heaved and escaped from the thing below. Fuck this. I could imagine its chest rising and falling with each sordid, wheezing, and garbled breath. I shuddered and hoped beyond all hope that it would leave without occurrence. The house lay, as it had the previous night, in the thick blanket of darkness. Silence prevailed, all but for the perverted breath of my, as yet, unseen bunkmate. I lay there terrified. I just wanted this thing to go, to leave me alone. What did it want? Then something unmistakably chilling transpired. It moved. It moved in a way different from before. When it threw itself around in the bottom bunk, it seemed unrestrained, without purpose, almost animalistic. This movement, however, was driven by awareness, with purpose, with a goal in mind. For that thing lying in the darkness, that thing which seemed intent on terrorizing a young boy, calmly and nonchalantly sat up. Its labored breathing had become louder, as now only a mattress and a few flimsy wooden slates separated my body from the unearthly breath below. I lay there, my eyes filled with tears, a fear which mere words cannot relate to you or anyone else coursed through my veins. I would have not believed that this fear could have been heightened, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. I imagined what this thing would look like, sitting there listening from below my mattress, hoping to catch the slightest hint that I was awake. Imagination then turned to an unnerving reality. It began to touch the wooden slabs which my mattress sat on. It seemed to caress them carefully, running what I imagined to be fingers and hands across the surface of the wood.
Then, with great force, it prodded angrily between two slants into the mattress. Even through the padding, it felt as though someone had viciously stuck their fingers into my side. I let out an almighty cry, and the wheezing, shaking, and moving thing in the bunk below replied in kind by violently vibrating the bunk, as it had done the night before. Small flakes of paint powdered onto my blanket from the wall as the frame of the bed scraping along it backwards and forwards. Once again I was bathed in light, and there stood my mother, loving, caring as she always was, with a comforting hug and calming words which eventually subdued my hysteria. Of course she asked what was wrong, but I could not say. I dared not say. I simply said one word over and over and over again. Nightmare. The pattern of events continued for weeks, if not months. Night after night I would awaken to the sound of rustling sheets. Each time I would scream so as to not provide this abomination with the time to prod or feel me. With each cry the bed would shake violently, stopping with the arrival of my mother, who would spend the rest of the night in the bottom bunk, seemingly unaware of the sinister force torturing her son nightly. Along the way I managed to feign illness a few times, and come up with other less than truthful reasons for sleeping in my parents' bed. But more often than not, I would be alone for the first few hours of each night in that place, the room where the light from the outside did not sit right, alone with that thing.
So, this whole time the parents are it's just part of growing up, I guess. But this kid is, freak out.
He's having, the parents would assume it would be like night terrors.
Yeah, but what therapist?
Yeah, well.
A therapist.
Yeah.
Get him help. Medicate him. I don't know. Pump him full of meds.
That's not always the solution.
Sedate the boy. What? No one. No one has thoughts on this. The
I
parents
guess,
just being cool
yeah. I
with
mean,
this?
they're not really cool with it, but I don't
What's that
think.
for your future?
I can imagine.
Wow.
I can imagine they're young parents, and that they're like, well, relatively young parents.
I mean,
they do have an older son, so I guess there's only so much you can do.
For the sake of the story,
Well, it
would make
seems they're
sense.
doing nothing. I mean, well, for what it's worth, the story this child is painting everything in quite an idyllic light outside of this issue he's having at night with the Phantom Jerker. It seems like everything else is great.
Jerking
It's
in
the
here.
jerk.
The wrestling sheets.
The Goat Man! The Goat Man Part 2!
It makes sense. Look, the point is, it's like, oh, we danced in the garden and we climbed the sycamore tree and my loving mother. And it's like, meanwhile, the parents probably off, like, drinking somewhere, not giving a fuck. I don't understand.
Well, yeah, that's what it is. They just want to, have time alone. And
We're making a lot of assumptions here. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, and
yeah, we don't.
again, if it's, what can you can't really do anything for night terrors when you really think about it. You really can't. I mean, you can medicate the kid, but that's it. Like, a therapist isn't going to help that. You fucking have night terrors. You have night terrors.
Change rooms.
That's not going to stop the night terrors.
Well, it would stop him in this case. The point
Yeah,
is,
but then you're arguing. Then that's not the argument then, because if you do move him out of the room, then that solves the problem. But you're talking from the parents' perspective.
Yeah.
The parents don't know the fucking thing is in there, and the kid won't fucking tell them because he's terrified. So there you go.
Yeah, and from their perspective, all this thing is nightmares.
Right.
And if he's having nightmares, well, that's not going to change if you move rooms.
well, he might.
And
just
who
be-
the fuck knows? Maybe this is night terrors. Maybe it's all
probably
this
is
kid's
just
head.
a night terror.
Right.
Maybe it's because his brother used to always jerk off when they were together, and now that the brother's out of the picture, he's still hearing whacking.
Psychosomatic.
Just constant whacking. That's all he hears. Really, this is the big brother's fault, is what I think we've come to.
Jesus.
You've come to.
I think that makes the most
I
sense.
don't know. I'm
think this is
enjoying the
just
story so
I
far.
think this is
Me
promise
too.
about being king of the hill on top of a bunk.
You hear the whackers underneath you, I agree.
All the peasants jerking their little peas
Oh,
while the
nasty
king
ass.
sits in the castle.
Little limp dick motherfucker. Slapping it around. No one needs that. This little kid's got
They're getting
PTSD.
caught in the top bunk.
Traumatic jerking. That's it.
Traumatic jerk.
It's just been too much. He's got an older brother, 5 years older than him. His brother's jerking off in the bed.
Yeah, and he's 8.
Yeah, this is
13,
primo bed
Yeah.
jerk years.
All right, Williams won me. I'm
But
into this theory.
with time, you can become desensitized to almost anything, no matter how horrific. I've come to realize
Oh, I didn't realize
that.
you. Okay.
Right? How'd you like that segue?
That was a good segue.
Right? I've come to realize that, for whatever reason, this thing could not harm me when my mother was present. It was the shame. I am sure the same would have been said of my father, but as loving as he was, waking him from sleep was almost impossible. After a few months, I'd grown accustomed to my nightly visitor. Do not mistake this for some unearthly friendship. I detested the thing. I still feared it greatly, as I could almost sense its desires and personality, if you could call it that. One filled with a perverted and twisted hatred, yet longing for me, of perhaps all things.
Oh boy.
This is tying into some weird shit with his brother. This all, I don't want to know what happened when they were together.
Oh, God.
My greatest fears were realized in the winter. The days grew short, and the longer nights merely provided this wretch with more opportunities. It was a difficult time for my family. My grandmother, a wonderfully kind and gentle woman, had deteriorated greatly since the death of my grandfather. My mother was trying her best to keep her in the community as long as possible. However, dementia is a cruel and degenerative illness, robbing a person of their memories one day at a time. Soon she recognized none of us, and it became clear she would need to be moved from her house to a nursing home.
Before she could be moved, my grandmother had a particularly difficult few nights, and my mother decided that she would stay with her. As much as I loved my grandmother and felt nothing but anguish at her illness, to this day I feel guilty that my first thoughts were not of her, but of what my nightly visitor may do should it become aware of my mother's absence. Her presence being the one thing which I was sure was protecting me from the full horror of this thing's reach.
Nightly visitor, like a sex.
I'm saying this is an allegory for domestic abuse.
I think you.
That's what this is.
No, but is a nightly visitor something like it's some
Sex
kind of
offender.
sexual
Yes.
innuendo?
Yes.
I don't. What is that? What is it?
You're
Though?
connected
Like
us
a parent or a sibling coming into the room at night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And yeah.
like sleeping
This is-
directions. I felt like that was the thing.
I'm lost in what you're saying, so can you, like...
No,
He's saying
you're
kids
looking
being
at this too
abused
deeply because
somehow.
of some rustling shit.
No, the kid's being molested.
I mean, it's possible. We don't know until we get to
I
the
don't know
end
what
of
the
fucking-
face is. This is all pointing to a
Oh,
molestation.
top bunk? You left it? Oh, well.
You can let even the
Yeah.
king of the hill sometimes has demons still.
Jesus, man.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I rushed home from school that day and immediately wrenched the bed sheets and mattresses from the lower bunk. Moving all the slats and placing an old desk, a chest of drawers, and some chairs, which we kept in a cupboard,
Kid's smart.
where the bottom bunk used to be. I told my father I was making an office, which he found adorable, but I would be damned if I give that thing a place to sleep for one more night.
It's pretty fucking smart for an 8-year-old.
Why was it under that?
Well, I mean, it could be.
As darkness approached, I lay
Or
there.
it just fucking crawls into the bed with him. That would be fun.
As darkness approached, I lay there knowing my mother was not in the house. I did not know what to do. My only impulse was to sneak into her jewelry box and take a small... Is that spelled right? Jewelry?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Sorry. And small family crucifix, which I had seen there before. While my family were not very religious at that age, I still believed in God and hoped that somehow...
Yeah,
this would be
8 years old, everybody still believes in fairy tales.
Let people believe in God.
Oh, I'm just kidding. Believe when you want to believe. All right.
Although
I'm
fearful,
just fucking around.
Although fearful and anxious while gripping the crucifix under my pillow tightly in one hand, sleep eventually came, and as I drifted off to dream, I hoped that I would awaken in the morning without incidents. Unfortunately, that night was the most terrifying of all. I woke gradually, and the room was once again dark. As my eyes adjusted, I could gradually make out the window and the door, and the walls, some toys on a shelf, and even to this day I shudder to think of it, for there was no noise, no rustling of the sheets, no movement at all. The room felt lifeless. Lifeless, yet not empty. The night...
Oh, I thought you... Okay, keep going.
The nightly visitor, that unwelcome, wheezing, hate-filled thing which had terrorized me night after night, was not in the bottom bunk. It was in my bed.
Son of a bitch.
I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Utter terror had shaken the very sound from my voice. I lay motionless. If I could not scream, I did not want to let it know I was awake.
I had not seen it yet. I could only feel it. It was obscured under my blanket. Oh, fuck. Oh, man.
You're right.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. I could see its outline, and I could feel its presence, but I dared not look. The weight of it pressed down on top of me, and says, yeah, all right, I'm getting really... William's giving me the fucking look right now. A sensation I will never forget. When I say that hours passed, I do not exaggerate. Laying there motionless in the darkness, I was every bit a scared and frightened young boy. If I... Stop! Look, you keep shooting me that look.
This is fucked up. This kid's being molested.
All right, if I had been during the summer months, it would have been light by then, but the grasp of winter is long and unrelenting, and I knew it would be hours before sunrise, a sunrise which I yearned for. I was a timid child by nature, but I reached a breaking point, a moment where I could wait no more, where I could survive under this intimately deviant abomination no longer. Fear can sometimes wear you out, make you threadbare, a shell of nerves leaving only the slightest trace of you behind. I had to get out of that bed. Then I remembered the crucifix. My hand still lay underneath the pillow, but it was empty. I slowly moved my wrist around to find it, minimizing as best I could the sound and vibrations caused, but it could not be found. I'd either knocked it off the top bunk, or it had, I could not even bear to think of it, been taken from my hand. That was a little awkward. Without the crucifix, I lost any sense of hope. Even at such a young age, you can be acutely aware of what death is, and intensely frightened of it. I knew I was going to die in that bed if I lay there, dormant, passive, doing nothing. I had to leave that room behind, but how? Should I leap from the bed and hope that I make it to the door? What if it's faster than me? Or should I slowly slip out of the top bunk, hoping to not disturb my uncanny bedfellow? Realizing that it had not stirred when I moved, trying to find the crucifix, I began to have the strangest thoughts. What if it was asleep?
I hadn't so much as breathed since I had woken up. Perhaps it was resting, believing that it had finally got me. That I was finally in its grasp, or perhaps it was toying with me. After all, it had been doing this just that for countless nights, and now with me under it, pinned against my mattress with no mother to protect me, maybe it was holding off, savoring its victory until the last possible moment. I feel like there's a lot of run-on sentences here.
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot of commas. Like a wild animal savoring its prey. I tried to breathe as shallowly as possible, and mustering every ounce of courage I could, I reached over slowly with my right hand and began to peel the blanket off me. What I found under those covers almost stopped my heart. I did not see it, but as my hand moved to the blanket, it brushed against something smooth and cold, something which felt unmistakably like a gaunt hand. I held my breath in terror as I was sure it must now know that I was awake. Nothing. It did not stir. It felt dead. After a few moments, I placed my hand carefully further down the blanket and felt a thin, poorly formed forearm. My confidence and almost twisted sense of curiosity grew as I moved further down the disproportionately larger bicep muscle. The arm was outstretched, lying across my chest, with the hand resting on the top of my left shoulder as if it grabbed me in my sleep. I realized that I would have to move this cadaverous appendage if I even as so much hoped for us to escape its grasp. For some reason, the feeling of torn, ragged clothing on the shoulder of this nighttime invader stopped me in my tracks. Fear once again swelled in my stomach and in my chest as I recoiled its hand in disgust at the touch of its strangled, oily hair.
I could not bring myself to touch its face, although I wondered to this very day what it would have felt like. Dear God, it moved. It moved. It was subtle, but its grip on my shoulder and across my body strengthened. No tears came, but God, how I wanted to cry. As its hand and arm slowly coiled around me, my right leg brushed along the cool wall which the bed lay against. Of all that happened to me in that room, this was the strangest. I realized that this clutching, rancid thing which drew great delight from violating a young boy's bed...
All right, why you gotta shoot that over to me?
...was not entirely on top of me. It was sticking out from the wall like a spider striking from its lair. Suddenly, its grip moved from a slow tightening to a sudden squeeze. It pulled and clawed at my clothes as if frightened that the opportunity would soon pass. I fought against it, but its emaciated arm was too strong for me. Its head rose up, writhing and contorting under the blanket. I now realized where it was taking me. Into the wall! I fought for my dear life. I cried, and suddenly my voice returned to me. Yelling, screaming, but no one came.
Then I realized why I was so eager to suddenly strike. Why this thing had to have me now. Through my window, that window which seemed to represent so much malice from outside, streaked hope, the first rays of sunshine. I struggled further, knowing that if I could just hold on, it would soon be gone. As I fought for my life, the unearthly parasite shifted, slowly pulling itself up my chest, its head now poking out from under the blanket, wheezing, coughing, rasping. I do not remember its features. I simply remember its breath against my face, foul and as cold as ice. As the sun broke over the horizon, that dark place, that suffocating room of content, was washed, bathed in sunlight. I passed out as its scrawny fingers encircled my neck, squeezing the very life from me. I awoke to my father offering to make me some breakfast. A wonderful sight indeed. I had survived the most horrible experience of my life until then. And now I moved the bed away from the wall, leaving behind the furniture I had believed would stop that thing from taking a bed. Little did I think that it would try to take mine and me. Weeks passed without incidents, yet on one cold frostbitten night I awoke to the sound of the furniture where the bunk beds used to be vibrating violently. In a moment it passed. I lay there sure I could hear a distant wheezing coming from deep within the wall, finally fading into the distance.
I've never told anyone this story before. To this day, I still break out in a cold sweat at the sound of bed sheets rustling in the night or a wheeze brought on by a common cold, and I certainly never sleep with my bed against the wall. Call it superstition if you will, but as I said, I cannot discount conventional explanations such as sleep paralysis, hallucination, or that of an overactive imagination. What I can say is this. The following year, I was given a large room on the other side of the house, and my parents took that strangely suffocating, elongated place as their bedroom. They said they didn't need a large room, just one big enough for the bed and a few things. They lasted 10 days. We moved on the 11th.
And that was Michael Whitehouse's Bedtime, Part 1. So what do we all think?
Dude got touched.
All right. In all seriousness, I really enjoyed the story.
Yeah, I'm serious.
It's a really simple. It's a really simple setup, like I said before, but it's effective at what it is and what it does. I was kind of whatever about it being like quasi supernatural, and it's weird that the thing gets into its bed, tries to get him once really, and then just disappears.
Well, no, because what happens is he moves the bed away from the wall, so he can't get to him anymore. He puts the furniture against the wall because once he realizes the thing was coming from the wall, He even says at the end, "I never put my bed against a wall anymore."
So it's interesting because it's like there's this weird supernatural, like this thing lives in the wall somehow or whatever. I don't know if I necessarily would have preferred if he didn't like discover what it was and it just sort of tormented him underneath him. But I mean, even the end is still effective. It doesn't get overblown or go overboard like most of the stories we read. So yeah, I think this is a really solid story. It creeped me the fuck out because it's all some of my greatest fears anyway. So.
No, it does. I liked it because it, represents, when you're a child and you think, of the worst things happening at night, and it's your, being in the dark and your worst thinking comes
right. It like plays into that innate fear.
Yeah, it comes into fruition. As much as Will did joke about the molestation thing.
Here we go.
I mean, it could be someone. It could have been some loon maybe that snuck into the house, and that's why they moved. There's some crazy person outside their house that,
I mean, it could be the whole wall thing. Me, I mean, but again, with interpretations, maybe the kid, because he's like, I'm not ruling out sleep paralysis, I'm not ruling out hallucinations or night terrors so maybe it was fucking somebody, calling
right, but it wouldn't make sense for him to not come back after he moved the bed away from the wall.
That's right. That's true too.
That's why it stopped.
Too.
So I lean more towards night terrors than anything.
Yeah,
potentially, or it is some weird fucking supernatural creature.
It's very easy to just say it was night terrors. Just be like, it was like, this is what some children go through. If you want to read it as that way, as like a straight adult-oriented reading, where you're like, this is what children.
No,
go
I can
through.
also read this as like a wall monster as well.
Of course, and then if you want to read it totally straight, this is a very classic, very straightforward monster under the bed story.
Right.
Yeah. The monster was under my bed. It was scary. He tried to eat me. That's it. That's literally the story. Right. And it's written very well. And it's worded very ornately, and it's very interesting, and it draws you in, and it's well set up. And I know everyone's like, well, you're joking around. Well, you're fucking with us. But I feel like there's a genuine molestation read for this story. The wording he uses, deviant, perverse, right. Intimate, violated. Right.
He's talking about a boy's first time jerking off.
No, he's not.
Look, I mean, the jerking off thing was genuinely a joke. But
that's a joke. This is not.
This is not a joke. I really do believe the wording he used, the way this is set up.
Yeah, the word choice it seems very.
The word choice is very sexually charged in a lot of different places. And again, that would be how, if you're like a small child, you're getting molested, you disassociate.
Right.
That's what children do.
You don't tell your parents.
Right. You're traumatized and you disassociate. People live for years and years and years. They grow up being molested. And this is what happens. They're oppressive, they disassociate, they're traumatized.
Right.
And this can read as someone who is traumatized, who has constructed a story as a child to cope with what was happening, which was either probably an older brother molesting him every night. And when he finally fought back and kicked and screamed, and like the last time and made like a big fight out of it, I guess the guy stopped.
Right. Because you look at it and it's describing its features. To me, in my head, I imagine it's sort of like black, like flesh, like dead, sort of.
He writes it as a cadaver, yeah.
Right. But I mean, it could be a child. I mean, like if this is a bunk bed and this thing, well, if it's coming in through the wall, you're only getting its torso. It would make sense
he's
that
describing a humanoid shape hugging
and
him
it doesn't
at night
remember
and
its features and
him.
oily hair. Right.
The whole thing, yeah. I feel like it very strongly reads that way.
I mean, there's some weight to that. And again, I think the greatest stories that we've read do this, where we have 3 or 4 different reasons. We have the most logical, well, it's just night terrors. The kids never about night terrors. And then we have, it could be a fucking weird, super creepy wall demon. Or it could be him being, sexually assaulted by whoever. So this reminds me a lot of Wide Mouth in that way. Just having these sort of all valid, not like anything off the cuff that we've talked about or that we've
Well, Mr. Whitemouth, I mean, like what he's saying with the molestation, Whitemouth was an imagination that was
Right,
conjured
but
up from
I'm
a
saying
very drugged out,
thematic-
a kid who was on a lot of drugs, who was dealing with what was
saying-
Was
it?
it drugs? No, wasn't it like
No.
carbon monoxide or something like that?
Well, that was
That was
that
the
was
joke was a carbon monoxide leak in the house.
I'm just
No.
saying. I'm just
What's
saying.
that? No,
in terms
he
of,
had
like-
mono. It was okay. In Wide Mouth, it was mono, and I'm saying that he was probably on a lot of drugs.
Oh,
And-
okay.
Well, all I'm saying is the thing that the reason why it reminds me is that of that story is that it usually we'll read something and we'll either go, we won't have all valid differing interpretations of stuff, right? Where it's either we read something and it's fucking it's good and we all like it for what it is, or it's bad and it's boring and it's miserable. There's been very few stories where we read the story and then we sit there and go, oh, I think it's about this. Well, I think it's about this. Well, I think it's about this. And that's the sign of a good story. There's a good story.
I totally agree.
And that's why it reminds me of Wide Mouth, because it's the only other one in my memory that we sat there and we threw out all of our different ideas, and they were just as valid, sans the carbon monoxide thing,
I still
as
like that theory.
interpreting what's going on. This and maybe
Interpreting
like
literature
Ruffles.
in your own way
Right.
makes it a good story.
And we all have these valid sort of arguments. I mean, we're all pulling things from the text, and it totally makes sense, everything. I'm not going to argue against anything we've suggested because it's
And I'm
all
not-
valid.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I have the right thing. You know what I mean? Like, of course, it's well written. It's a good story.
So I would say that I really like the way that the story ended.
Right.
I like the way that it ended a lot. I really, really like the way it ended a lot. So my question, Mr. Whitehouse, if that is your real name, why are there 4 more parts to this?
Yeah, it's
That's
interesting.
I'm a little
That
curious.
worries me.
I'm a little curious.
I'm not curious. I'm fucking worried.
But I'm curious enough to read them, but I'm curious as to how you can make a sequel out of this.
There's
Well,
usually
The only thing I can
It's
think
usually a
of,
prequel or
it'll either be because my whole, assuming this is some sort of wall monster that's living in the walls of this, if we're going to read the story straight, and it's a wall monster living there, and obviously, like with Mr. Widemouth, once they move out of the house and once the parents deal with it,
right.
it's gone.
And according to this, that's what happens.
Right. They move on the 11th and they never deal with this thing again. Or, so either this creature is going to follow them, the brother goes with him, or it's an entirely new family in the same
Right.
house.
Which would be interesting. I would actually enjoy that probably the most. But to me, if now that we're talking about the ending, I would say the only argument that says that it's against the whole molestation interpretation is that the parents move into that room and then 10 days later they're gone.
Sure. I mean, the only thing I could say is that, again, that could be more of his own way of construing his
right,
situation,
okay.
which
That's
is
fair.
kind of a cop-out argument, but at
That's
the same
fair.
time, that's the whole
Right.
premise of this, which is that it's someone making their own version of reality to
But John, even
preserve sanity.
if it's one of those 3, how does he make 3 more parts after?
That's
after
what I'm
part two?
nervous about.
Yeah, I'm
And-
very, very fucking nervous.
And I read the dates. All of them were made in December of 2012.
Really?
So he wrote
Jesus.
these all. So when he wrote part
One
2,
shot.
so it's kind of like with Pen Pal. When 1,000 Vultures wrote Footsteps, he wrote that as his own standalone story. Once he wrote Balloons, I think he was intending to write boxes and
There
then
was sort of buzz
blah blah
around it.
blah. And yeah, there was buzz around it. So he said, "Now I'm going to make this a series." Maybe that's what Michael Whitehouse wanted to do.
Well, we can only hope it's as good as fucking Pen Pal, because
That's a tough bar to get to.
I think the Thousand Vultures' real name is Dathan. I think
Dathan,
right? He followed through and he did it successfully.
Oh, he did.
I think Pen Pal, and we didn't get a chance to do this, but from memory serves, because it's been so long, there aren't too many differences between the novel and the story as we read it. There's a couple of little additions.
There's more
thrown in,
additions. There's a couple more
just
minor,
to clean some stuff up.
some minor characters.
Right, to clean some
Things
stuff
are
up. plot-wise.
more exposition because it's a novel now.
So to me, like that's somebody, but again, we talked about this in previous podcasts where you could tell when somebody has an idea or an image, the image of horror, and then writes around that and doesn't really know what the fuck to do with the image, and somebody who wrote a story and then actually sat down, brainstormed how they could expand on it, and wrote something that's really fucking solid.
And speaking more about that, again, you can tell the difference between someone who outlines a story and writes it and knows how it's going to end ahead of time. This story does that.
Right.
I think he knew what he wanted, and he got what he wanted out of the story.
Right.
Unlike some people who write and just kind of write into a void, if that's a way of saying it.
George R. R. Martin.
Gosh. Wow. Wow. We're attacking everyone today.
Just a really bad
Showers torture.
An overrated writer was caught in my throat.
Oh, wow.
Had a cough.
Oh, wow. Season 8, April, the final season.
Pass.
Has he ever finishing that series?
No.
And he's been in recently. He did an interview. He's like, yeah, I'm just as upset it's not done as you. Motherfucker, you're writing it. Write it.
He's like
He's too busy writing the goddamn Targaryen backstory. I'm sorry, I can't get into this.
Yeah, we can't. It's a rabbit hole.
I can't. If you want us to cover Game of Thrones, be the number one in the competition.
I was like, no, I don't know nothing of it, so.
Just don't expect a positive take.
I love that fucking show, but that's neither here nor there. I just hope it's at least it follows through.
I don't know if we'll be able to cover all of it. I haven't watched any of Game of Thrones, so I don't know if we'll cover all of it.
Well, no, I'm talking about the goddamn story. I'm going back to the story. I hope it doesn't derail, because this is really solid. As a standalone, it's really solid. So every time we do these and then you tell me there's more, I get really fucking nervous, especially if the story's good.
There's generally an inverse relationship between number of sequels and sustained quality of writing.
So. I mean, that's anything, right? That's anything.
Unless you're pen pal.
Unless you're pen pal.
Or Fast and Furious.
Or Fast and Furious. Or Slime Beast, which, by the way, we still got to finish that. I'm putting that out there.
Fast and
Furious.
All right, so final thoughts on Bedtime. Let's just end this now.
2 thumbs up. I would say 8 1/4. Firm, but not entirely ripe pumpkins. They're a little past their prime, but they're still good. You can still cut them open, use the seeds. You can eat the seeds. You can make a jack-o'-lantern. Yeah.
Don?
I give it a thumbs up. I'm not going to go into detail with the penguin.
Do you give 2 thumbs up or just 1?
I'm giving how many thumbs up? 1 right now.
It's half measure. I don't like that.
Yeah, it's it was good. No, I enjoyed the story itself. But it's like I feel like there's a lot more of these. These stories. You would hear. But I also when I think of this, like when we were reading this, I was thinking like my own also, like trying to when you have your own night terrors.
Yes.
And all that stuff. I'm not saying like there's more stories. Like I meant to say was like it works well with your own stories that you can relate to.
Well, human experience, yeah. Yeah. In general, obviously, this is
that's what I enjoyed.
I mean, the best horror kind of is it's specific, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? It can
it leaves enough that you can occupy the headspace yourself.
Right. Yeah. Right. Thank you, William, because my brain just fucking melted.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah.
I feel like this podcast has warped my ability to judge stories sometimes, because sometimes I go with, like, sometimes there's stories that are good, and there are stories that are good for the podcast.
Right.
I feel like The Showers is not good, but it's good for the podcast.
Right. Well, we're the fucking, You could sit there and do that with movies too, like The Room or whatever. It's a terrible fucking movie. People love watching it.
And talking about it and stuff. This, I feel, is generally good for both. I feel like a lot of good discussion. Anytime you get Mr. Wine, I feel like that's like, we talk about Pen
gold standard.
We talk about Mr. Pen Pal being like the best thing we've ever read. I feel like whenever a short story is related back to Mr. Widemouth, it usually means it was really, really good.
Yes.
And this story relates to Mr. Widemouth.
And holy shit, we actually had a intelligent conversation with minimal fucking dumb shit.
Thank God you said that now and not before. I think I would have thrown that.
Yeah, I'm gonna jinx it.
Right.
But yeah, there are 3 types of podcasts, John. There's ones where we do really good interpretation. There's ones where we sit there and goof off and everyone laughs, and there's ones that we absolutely fucking hate the story and everyone loves it anyway.
I feel like this was a combination of at least the first 2. As Dylan is fine. That's okay.
I'm listening.
It's all right. This is the end of the podcast. So join us for the next one. So this has been my friends, Dan, Dylan, and William, and we will see you on the next episode. Peace, everybody. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.